Hello and welcome to Rule of Carnage. This is a podcast wherein me, Mike Hutchinson, designer of miniature games, and him, Glenn Ford, designer of miniature games, talk about designing better miniature games. And we sometimes talk about making better miniature games, which is going to be the topic of today's discussion, which is coming to you via the Rule of Carnage podcast or here on YouTube, wherever it might be. The thing that we've both been engaged in this year is running some Kickstarters for miniature games that we have designed. And in order to get miniature games into the awaiting and loving arms of players, it helps if they have some miniatures. Now, we have a few tactics for this. Of course, one of them is miniature agnosticism, which we have discussed and potentially proposed rebranding on earlier episodes, but that's good. That means, hey, just use the miniatures that you've already got and use our rule system. But Glenn and I both decided this year to, in slightly different ways, and that's, I guess, where we'll explore, to offer miniatures with our rule books. And so you, gentle listener, if you are an independent miniature games designer or have hopes to be one, that's what we were hoping to sort of chew on what some of the options are that are available to you. In my case, the route that I chose, so I'll talk about the route I choose for Space Kits, then you talk about Borders and Black Flags, and there's a couple of other potentials as well. The route I chose for Space Kits was wooing and befriending an existing miniature producer. In my case, it was Cromlech or bitsofwar.com, depending on which branding you look at, and asking them, as I often do, if I could use their miniatures in the photography of my rule book. And then that matured into a discussion where they were sort of beginning to ask some questions about whether there was a partnership available, and I started to ask some questions about whether there was an opportunity to offer their miniatures in a sort of retail capacity, but through Kickstarter, because they offer their miniatures to retailers across the world. And so I was interested, well, would combining your miniatures and my rulebook work for you guys? Or is Kickstarter going to make it confusing and look like you're, doing something that you aren't doing or whatever? Anyway, fast forward, you can clearly see that conversation ended up being super positive for both parties. I wanted to offer lovely miniatures. They wanted to have more of their miniatures bought and to be associated with my brand. And so that was a lovely way of doing it. So that's, like, in general, reaching out to a independent either designer or manufacturer and seeing if there's a kind of a slightly tight partnership to be done. And in this case, Cromlech were open to the idea of sculpting specific miniatures for the Kickstarter. So we ended up doing quite a tight partnership. And that's awesome for me. That's like the sort of the tightest thing that you can do without going out and hiring artists, which is an option that we'll explore, but neither of us have got immediate experience of. So that's how I did for Space Kits, befriend a miniature company. Glenn, what did you do for, what was your approach for Borders and Black Flags?
So the way I went with Borders and Black Flags is securing STL licenses.
Commercial licenses for STLs.
Yeah, and there are various ways you can do that. So I think the I guess maybe lowest impact, highest risk version is to go out on my mini factory or wherever it happens to be, find some STLs that are going to match to your game, and the vast majority of creators on my mini factory will have a Patreon tier in some way attached, which will give you a vendor's license for a month or so, and you can continue that subscription. Obviously, if you're selling on Kickstarter and your Kickstarter is a month long, you are only selling for a month or two. You're probably selling a much narrower part of their range than most other people who are going to be on that tier. So I think that's where that sort of evens out. I think that one, it has various risks associated with it, in that presumably you're going to be
one of which matured for you during the preparation for Borders and Black Flags.
So it's interesting because the three different factions that I used in Boards and Black Flags have three slightly different stories to them in relation to that. And interesting, there is a fourth faction that never happened because of going through that process. So I'll sort of talk about those. So originally there was a fisherman faction in Boards and Black Flags that I wrote sort of some basic ideas and mechanics around. And then I went looking for STLs, and the one company that had a set that I really, really wanted, I reached out to. And not only were they not willing to even have their miniatures photographed and put into a book, which I think technically they don't. I'm shaky about whether they even have the legal right to refuse that, but I'm not
They
about to.
don't, but they could come at you with legal action if they wanted to stop you. But like, yeah, no, the copyright lies in the photograph.
Yeah, it's like yeah,
I'm not a
basically.
lawyer. That's just my understanding.
Yes, yes. But it's like I don't particularly want to have like,
Yeah, it's like it's yeah.
somebody annoys
Now
me.
it's a question like, do I want to promote these guys? No.
Yeah, and they absolutely don't let you have their stuff in a Kickstarter like sell their
So it
stuff.
was specifically prohibited from the commercial license.
Yes, it very much was.
And that, like, I can understand that. Like, running a Kickstarter has a certain set of expectations from the consumer. And so if it's a third party running a Kickstarter to offer these, like, I can see why people would get weird about it.
Yeah. The second license was by Battle Yak Miniatures, and they've been absolutely brilliant. Now, partly, so they're the guys who make the STLs that are the Trillions, the sort of tech pirates,
Hmm.
and partly because the tech pirates had such a distinctive look to them. I reached out to him early on to say, look, I'm going to have like this dude in the artwork in the book. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with me getting an artist to like draw him? And he was great. He was like, yeah, that's brilliant. I really love the idea of you doing that. I'm totally fine with you having it in the book and on Kickstarter and etc. etc. And got the commercial license for that. And so that's been a really lovely relationship.
Hmm.
And I might sort of reach out to him for commission job in the future, depending on where the game goes. Um,
And that, yeah, that's exactly the sort of relationship you want. You want something where, like, there is benefits in both directions, and finding someone who recognizes and values that is awesome. Like,
yeah.
that's perfect.
The third faction is the Dead Seas, and that's the one that's become sort of most significantly problematic. And that's sort of what I was alluding to earlier, is that you're presumably going to be designing, play testing, at least the factions of your game for like whatever 4, 5, 6 months. Um, Between me deciding to do the Dead Seas and writing factions and designing rules, and launching the Kickstarter, the guy who made the STLs has gone dead on the internet, as far as I can.
Right. He's shuttered.
Yes, he's very much shut it down. His Instagram hasn't been touched in quite a while. I've reached out to him in various messages. He has as for all intents and purposes, sort of dead lettered the my mini factory account. So while I can still send people over there, and I'm looking around for other potential uh, skeleton pirate STLs I can use, that has left that one in a little bit of a no man's land.
Mm.
And then the last faction, the Sea Queens, is the thing I would strongly recommend people try to like track down at this point. So often Kickstarters for SDLs will have lifetime commercial license tiers attached to them. These are very much as the name suggests, they're commercial licenses. Once you've got them, you can sell the physical prints forever in perpetuity, whether the guy goes dark and disappears forevermore.
And that is sort of specific to Kickstarter because it doesn't fit the Patreon model, and there isn't another platform by which creators and potential vendors really are transacting at the moment.
I assume that's the reasoning for it. I think the reasoning might well be simply that it's a good way for those campaigns to punch up their funding levels in a chunky jump. So they're not massive amounts of money. On average, it seems to be about 50 quid, $60, that sort of
And
ballpark.
it's true to say that you have been sort of speculating on a number of Kickstarters with that offering for a while in order to kind of build up a bit of a set of optionality around various ranges, right?
Yeah, so obviously I spend quite a while sort of spectating Kickstarter, and if a set of miniatures comes up that are in the ballpark of something that I think I might want to do at some point in the future, I pick up the lifetime commercial license for them because, like I say, it's not an enormous, like 50 quid is not an enormous amount of money. Um,
Yeah, compared to commissioning people to make something specific,
Well,
it's
exactly,
crazy
and
money.
if you keep your eye out long enough, there are enough STL campaigns on Kickstarter with enough of a range of stuff that you can just walk into something that's exactly perfect. Like, so for example, the next thing I want to do is Dauntless, which is a horror survival Arctic game. Literally, like last month, a creator that I already really like their stuff, for Davey Creations, put up a Mountains of Madness set of a bunch of explorers in furs, and also has albino penguins in the set, and an elder thing in the set, and tents and dog sleds and all that sort of stuff. And that has a commercial license attached. And I put so it's like literally, if I went and commissioned miniatures for that game, that is what I would commission.
Yeah, right.
And now I've got like a lifetime license to print them, and it, like I say, it was not an expensive thing. So it's like I would strongly suggest that if you're an independent games designer and you think you might want to go out and put a miniatures range out there at some point, hanging around Kickstarter and keeping an eye out for STL files, because those commercial licenses are I think the lowest cost and most secure way of having the right to produce physical miniatures for a game. Um,
So I think that that last like specific example that you provided, the Mountains of Madness from sorry, what was the creator's name?
a Davy Creations, I think.
Davy Creations. Like that to me points in a really fun direction that I've like with Cromlech, it has a flavor of this, but it's not quite the same. But like last year, I think we were talking about this in the Discord with a few folks. But like if you spend a fair amount of time browsing through My Mini Factory, exploring the world of, the My Mini Factory tribes or the Patreon accounts that have regular updates. And like oddly enough, a really good way of exploring this world is through Etsy as well, like browsing for specific miniature ranges on Etsy and then following them back to where that miniature's been designed. Like the next statement is in no way to disparage the thing, but like there are a ton of independent miniature makers out there making STLs, and many of them are freaking awesome.
Mm.
There are also a ton of independent miniature game designers creating cool rule systems, and my goodness, the two should get together and have a party. So I feel like it wasn't quite the same with Cromlech because they're a bit more of they're obviously a much more established company, and they also don't run in the sort of STL situation. But if you are an independent miniature games designer and you find another independent designer, a miniature designer who's working in the area that you think is cool, or maybe they have a range that you think you could really put some rules to, then I think that there's an awesome place to just reach out to that person and see if a relationship, a creative relationship or a business relationship can be forged to say, like, hey, you've got some albino penguins. I really have a cool idea for an albino penguin racing game that we should do, that I would like to do. Like, can I make the game? Can I use your stuff? Can you help me promote it to your audience and I'll promote your stuff to my audience? Can we do, whether it's a crowdfunded thing or whether it's, released through the many digital platforms, like, can we do something where we both make a bit of money out of this? And potentially, you're doing work to make a game and you might change your game and make faction rules as a result of the miniatures that you kind of work that you're selecting from their range. Equally, it might be that they say, "Oh wow, actually making a few extra miniatures is not that hard for me. I needed to come up with something for the next couple of months for my Patreon. Like I may as well pivot onto like making Jeeps or whatever. Because if you need Jeeps for the game, let's get me. I'll get some Jeeps to my Patreons, and that will line up." So I think that this is like as with many of these sort of partnerships, it's about finding the right potential partner, and that's someone who's at a similar level to you,
Mm,
someone who's got a similar hunger, who has a similar sized audience, where the relationship's going to be quite equally weighted, and particularly finding someone that is very communicative and you can find, a genuine and open communication with. And so I think that that is a really fun way for independent games designers to work and, just sort of mate with the amazing world of STL producers, because there just isn't enough at the moment. I feel there isn't enough that's connecting
mm,
the awesome Patreons and My Mini Factory accounts and all of the amazing stuff that's on, Itch and War Games Vault, etc.
mm.
So yeah, I would urge you to forge those connections. And what I suspect will happen if you do that and you find the right person is that both of you will look much cooler and bigger than you would have
Mm.
done individually.
Yeah, all those people have followings of some degree, whether big or small. And so every single time you reach out to one and you say, I want to use your stuff, and they're like, well, if you put a link through to my overall my mini factory thing, I will promote your stuff.
Mhm.
That's a sort of it's an obvious sort of virtuous, relationship there. Everybody's getting something out of it. And I think like also I find it sometimes I find it a little odd that when I come across like designers who decide that that their game has to have a guy that looks like this and it has to have a guy who looks like that and has to have a guy who looks like that. When you make the I write the rules for the guys. I can change that at a moment's notice. That is zero effort for me. I don't make the miniatures and STLs. And so it's like I knew I wanted to kind of have some tech pirates in Borders and Black Flags. I found the most sort of flexible range of tech pirates who looked cool and looked right and had a good range of miniatures. And then I wrote, the units to match those miniatures because that is simply what I think makes most sense
Mm.
as an independent game designer. And like also it's a free sort of bit of inspiration in a way because it's like
Mm.
I've got a vague idea of what this faction does, but it's lovely having a little miniature and looking at it and going, oh, he's got a weird electro sticky pole thing there.
That's definitely how I worked with Space Kits. Like I spent a long time kit bashing at random, and then I went back through and was just like, oh, okay, I need like a rules for this and rules for that.
Yeah, and it's a great way of somebody sort of supplying that sort of bit for you. I think like sort of tracking back a little bit to like what you were saying about Cromlech, there is the option to sort of look around some of these smaller mid-size like physical miniatures producers and have a look at what they've got on their sprues and have a look at
Yeah.
like how these things could be packaged together. I think like
I mean, the one box war game challenge really pointed us all in the direction of, particularly the War Games Atlantic range, and wondering how could we deploy these, sometimes historical, but sometimes science fictiony,
yeah,
yeah, existing ranges.
and coming out of one box war games, I want to say blood in the sands, blood on the sands. So
Mhm.
one of the guys from our Discord who put together a gladiatorial combat game for the one box war game has partnered up with War Games Atlantic, and my understanding is that they've put some sprues that they already had into a specific like box for him, or something along those lines. And that's like, well, that's absolutely perfect. He's sort of
Yeah, and it's the same with Forbidden Psalms Last War. That's,
mm,
uh he he's not he's not of a scale where he can afford miniature production. He has
mm,
open licensed the system, so other people have made miniatures for it. But then he did exactly the same thing, struck up a deal with War Games Atlantic, and there are other mid-size miniature manufacturers that I'm sure will take calls as well. And it's
yeah,
interesting because it's like when we both started our journeys, we approached these sorts of miniature manufacturers with the sort of, hey, will you publish my game mindset? But we have evolved into much more of like a, hey, I am publishing a game. Could we do a thing together?
mm,
And that's kind of, that's a confidence jump for sure. But I think that's a thing that's definitely worth, if you have got something of value and you think you know how to bring it to market, and then you can combine that with essentially co-promoting somebody else's stuff and reducing the whole barrier of entry to everyone, inspiring that, these gamers to both pick up your game and these miniatures, then there's a real like win-win thing here where you don't have to enter a publishing relationship with a mid-size miniature creator. You can do something in a more um bi-directional way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there's one thing generally to sort of take from this particular conversation, it's like to reach out to the people that are making the things that you think are cool or that will fit to the thing that you want to do, because you'll be surprised how many of them, ones that you might think are too big for you or bigger than you, where you are just offering them value. You are straight up offering them some value where you're going like, look, here's a thing that will give people a reason to buy your range.
Hmm.
What's not to like about that? You
Yeah, absolutely. Like to exactly this point. Like I emailed Evan Carathers from what is it? EC3D Designs
mm,
on my mini factory because he has these like freaking awesome spaceships that are just perfect for A Billion Suns. And he's run a couple of Kickstarters, and I'd forgotten that he actually, one of the Kickstarters, he had like a little PDF that explained which like mass classes in A Billion Suns each of his ship designs were. And exactly this, like I was looking around for what miniatures I want to put in the next Billion Suns book because I put in Brigade Games spaceships last time. I wanted to do something different with a different feel this time, and I loved his stuff. And I just thought, look, if I'm going to put one set of spaceships in the book, I'd love it to be this. It's got like a totally different cartoony vibe. Emailed him, and like immediately we're like off to the races. I've got a bunch of ships from him. We're trying to figure out if there's other things we can do. He's interested in what factions I'm thinking about or what kind of styles of miniatures, so that he can imagine, so he can start planning around that. And
mm.
it's exactly that. Like I just took a look at what I thought was coolest, and turned out that the person at the other end of that email address was also a cool creative person.
Yeah, I mean, look, probably if you're designing a game, you are like hopefully playtesting that game, and you're probably using some physical
If
miniatures.
not, have we got some strong words for you?
Well, yeah, you're probably using some physical miniatures for that process.
Yeah.
If the miniatures you are using for that process do not come direct from Games Workshop,
Hmm.
talk to the people who made them. That I think is like a one sort of quick thing. But yeah, like go hunting around my mini factory, go looking on Kickstarter for people that are doing STL projects. Consider like shifting some of the design elements. Like the factions are a fairly movable feast in most designs. Consider shaping your factions around the things that are available to you. Look out for SDL licenses. Like I say, are very cheap and a very sort of easy, low stress way of sort of being able to provide something, because it's like, sure, these are miniatures agnostic games, but people do like to know that there's an option for them if they don't
Hmm.
want to go hunting and kit bashing and figuring out for themselves. That it is nice to sort of be able to say, people, okay, look,
Yeah,
you're not,
not everyone does. Yeah. And
yeah, you're
even if
not,
they do, having a step zero that's like, well, if you do nothing, they're going to look like this. Oh, cool. Okay. I can bounce off that from a kick bashing perspective. Now I can think of something that's cooler than Route Zero.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think those are sort of some of the quick ways that a small independent nothing budget project can like be able to provide physical miniatures to people.
Yeah.
Like I
And there
say,
is obviously the commission your own miniatures to be designed. We're not going to talk about it. We don't know. Neither of us have done it.
yeah,
If
I
you know
mean,
how to do it, drop it in the comments.
there's at least a couple of people on the Discord again who have actually done this. And I want to try and like have a conversation. At some point, we should consider having other people on the on the podcast. But I'd like like to talk to some of them about doing it and just experiment with it. But yeah, that's totally a thing you can go and do. I don't think either of us are currently going to sort of try and weigh in on a set of opinions on it because we haven't been through
No,
that.
and also because I simply don't imagine myself doing it anytime soon, because the idea of working in a collaborative relationship with somebody with their own audience just seems so much better on every level.
Yeah, I generally I
I
do
don't know what size I would need to be to like make commissioning my own first party miniatures worthwhile. And I think that like at least for me, like I don't want to get to that size. I want to stay smaller than that, where I'd rather be, doing split EPs with people.
I'll be honest, part of me is kind of like one of the things I like about doing card games and things is that I like commissioning an artwork from somebody and like seeing a thing come back and like
Mm.
knowing that this is my like I've got the artwork from several of my games up on my walls in framed pictures, and I kind of
Mm.
like just doing that for myself. And I think at some point I'll probably commission an STL just to have commissioned an STL, which might be a
Maybe, but like I've got this giant Gurk hobgoblin guy from the
Hmm,
Hobgoblin campaign. That just happened as a result of like Greg getting something commissioned. I've got the freaking awesome Officer Crunk miniature painted
hmm,
up. That's one of my favorite miniatures that I own now. But again, that was because of a relationship where there was
hmm.
a bi-directional value thing. I didn't commission that to be made. I wrote the art brief for it, but
Yeah, but yeah, in short, it is possible to give your customers, potential customers, physical miniatures for as little as $20.
mhm.
Genuinely, a month Patreon at a commercial provider level on many my mini factories is literally like $20, or zero cost if you actually figure out a relationship with somebody that's going to be mutual. So it is within your budget, and I think it's like one of the most exciting things about being an independent miniatures designer at the moment is it is within every single person watching this video's budget to provide a physical miniatures range for the game that they are designing.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is
Mm.
something that like has never been true previously. It used to be like 6 grand was your like entry level for doing that. Now, companies like Aetherworks and My Mini Factory are going to allow you to give a miniatures range physically to somebody. Oh, the other
Yeah, and that's important. Like, we're not talking here about like, oh, you can give miniatures to the portion of your player base that knows how to use a 3D printer and owns one. No, 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 no.
no, no,
Everybody can have these,
yeah.
as long as you get your solution figured out, which we've talked about before in terms of our like Kickstarter roundup stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll sort of round off this part of what might be a two-part conversation here.
Hmm.
Look, we're hobbyists. We enjoy kit bashing, but sometimes we want to have a miniatures range provided for us. If you've seen a independent game that had no sort of range for it and really wished there had been an option, which game was it? What miniature do you wish had existed or had been provided for you? Also, if there's like a My Mini Factory producer you particularly enjoy, and would really love to team up with, or there's a particular range of miniatures you've always had your eye on and wanted to write a game for, tell us what the range is. That way we can jump in and steal the range. No,
Oh
tell
yeah,
us.
in fact, just email them straight away, and then if they come back to you, congratulate us in a month's time on this video in the comments section.
Absolutely. But yeah, tell us which ranges you really enjoy. Tell us which games you wish had ranges. If you're telling us things, hit the like and subscribes because it, eases us reading the comments.
It tells
Um,
YouTube about it.
Yep, it also gets other people to see it. Check out the links section. I don't know when this video is going up, but Boards and Black Flags might still be live, but it'll at least have late pledges.
Hooray!
How much longer is the Space Kits late pledge option staying open for?
Yeah, I don't know. My wall chart's out there.
All right, may or may not be
Oh, I think it's until September. Yeah, it's like
okay.
mid-September. So yeah, there's
Okay,
definitely some time, some small amount of time left to grab a copy of Space Kits and its associated beautiful Cromlech miniatures.
absolutely, and that we've been talking about in this very conversation. So follow the links all through to those. Follow the links across to the various places you can buy our various products and make us variously joyful. Swing over to Patreon and support the channel directly. But for now, I think from this episode and this Rule of Carnage, it'll be a thank you and goodbye. So thank you and goodbye. Bye bye bye.
Cheers.